Mr. Speaker, I proceed to tackle the terms of reference. Mr. Speaker, let me put on record that at the committee level, no evidence of government-to-government transaction by Republic of Ghana was provided. Mr. Speaker, again, the minister responsible for health clearly admitted that he never contacted the government of Russia before signing this agreement. Mr. Speaker, take note that, Mr. Speaker, the issue under consideration is the procurement of Sputnik-V. And Mr. Speaker, Sputnik-V is manufactured in Russia. So if there's going to be any government-to-government transaction before the procurement, Russia must be included. The Speaker, the fact on the table was that the minister never engaged Russia before signing this contract. Mr. Speaker, it was clearly submitted to the committee that the minister wrote to Russia after he has signed the agreement, and clearly an afterthought. Clearly an afterthought. Mr. Speaker, the agreement between Agyeman-Manu and Republic of Ghana was signed on the 9th of March. Mr. Speaker, Ghana expressed interest of buying the vaccine on the 28th of April. Mr. Speaker, this is an evidence this is an exhibit that was provided to the committee, and it is labeled Exhibit MOH11. Mr. Speaker, one of the terms of reference is to whether or not the transaction under consideration was of international nature, and if it was of international nature, if Article 5 was fulfilled. Mr. Speaker, looking at the nature and the address of the private office of Agyeman-Manu, clearly it is not a Ghanaian. Mr. Speaker, and therefore any transaction between the private office of Agyeman-Manu and Republic of Ghana is of international nature. Fact. Mr. Speaker, the minister ought to have come to Parliament for prior approval. Mr. Speaker, the minister admitted that it's of international nature and it didn't come to Parliament. Mr. Speaker, the interesting aspect of it is that we requested to know whether or not the minister sought the advice of the AG. The Speaker, he provided Exhibit MOH9. Mr. Speaker, the minister wrote to the Attorney General after he has executed the contract. Mr. Speaker, and the Attorney General wrote to the minister responsible for health on the 12th of April. Mr. Speaker, whatever is provided here has no effect on the execution of the contract. Mr. Speaker, now general comment. Listen to what the Attorney General said. Their own government. Listen. Mr. Speaker, general comment 1. We observe that the agreement has been executed between the government of Ghana through the Ministry of Health and the private office of Agyeman-Manu, a member of the ruling family of Dubai, United Arab Emirates, therefore subject to provision 1815 of the 1922 Constitution. In view of this, parliamentary approval is required to ensure validity of the agreement. AG's report. It's not me saying it. Mr. Speaker, after the contract had been signed, Mr. Speaker, we were also to ascertain whether the procurement process was followed and the propriety of sale. Mr. Speaker, the only provision that gives the minister the opportunity to do sole sourcing in the Public Procurement Act is Section 41 and 42. The Speaker, 41 requires the minister to seek the approval of the prior approval of the board of PPA, and he must come with public notification. The Speaker, it will interest you to know that the minister ignored the Public Procurement Authority before, during the execution of the contract. Mr. Speaker, the minister then after the execution of the contract, wrote to the PPA to ratify the contract. And PPA in turn wrote back and said that they were not going to ratify, but they were going to investigate the minister why he didn't involve them and the circumstances leading to such execution of the contract. The Speaker, as I speak to you now, the said contract has not been ratified. The Speaker, the contract has not been ratified, and therefore the procurement law of this country has clearly been breached, and that's a statement of fact. The Speaker, whether the service of a middleman was procured in a transaction, and if so, the propriety of same having regard to the relevant laws. Mr. Speaker, a middleman. Mr. Speaker, if you are not dealing directly with the manufacturer or the government of the manufacturer, anybody in between is a middleman. Mr. Speaker, we didn't deal with the manufacturers of Sputnik-V. We didn't deal with the RDIF, which is the government responsible for the management of Sputnik-V. We dealt with Agyeman-Manu and SL Global. Clearly, they are middlemen. Mr. Speaker, as if that is not enough, listen to the comment from the Attorney General's Department. Listen. And he says, we also note that the vessels are produced or manufactured from Russia, and other countries are procuring directly from the manufacturers. But Ghana has elected to procure it through third party who is not an agent of the manufacturer, as such making him not liable to Ghana and Ghanaians in the likely event of any adverse effect. This is coming from the AG, Mr. Speaker. So this has been established. Mr. Speaker, let's move on. Mr. Speaker, again, justification of the cost. Whether we have value for money, $19 per dose. Mr. Speaker, we drew the minister's attention to the fact that the manufacturer has indicated that a dose of Sputnik-V should not be bought in the international market for more than $10. Mr. Speaker, interestingly, the minister told the committee that not until he met Agyeman-Manu, he didn't even know that RDF was responsible for the sales of Sputnik-V. What kind of due diligence did the minister do before entering into the contract? It clearly indicates that the minister knew very little about the vaccine. Mr. Speaker, again, you will realize that between $10 to $19, there's a mark of about 90% increment. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, we put it to the minister whether he saw nothing wrong with that price. Mr. Speaker, the minister admitted that yes, he was worried and that the price was high, but under the circumstances, that was the only option available to him. So clearly, the minister admitted that there was everything wrong with the price and there was no value for money. Mr. Speaker, whether any consideration had passed from the government of the Republic of Ghana to the middleman, the supplier, or any other person in respect of the transaction. This is a very interesting paragraph. Mr. Speaker, the minister, before the committee, indicated to us that as far as he is concerned, no payment has been made to the supplier. Mr. Speaker, we wrote to the Ministry of Finance, and the indication was that they had paid 50% of the total value of the LC, which amounted to more than 16 million Ghana cedis to the supplier in advance. Mr. Speaker, before the committee, we all realized that yes, the contract didn't come to Parliament. There were questions about procurement procedure. So I asked myself, under what circumstances did the minister responsible for finance make this payment? So any minister gets up and goes to the Minister of Finance and say, I've engaged in some contract, so pay. Then the Minister of Finance also goes ahead to do payment. Mr. Speaker, this is very, very worrying. Mr. Speaker, again, whether the Minister for Health misled Parliament during the consideration of the transaction for procurement of the vaccine. Mr. Speaker, the minister appeared before Parliamentary Select Committee on Health to defend a budget for procurement and deployment for vaccines. The minister, Mr. Speaker, he appeared on the 22nd and 23rd of March. Before coming to the committee, he had already signed that contract on the 9th and the 16th. Mr. Speaker, the minister never mentioned these two contracts at the committee. Again, he made a specific statement and provided document to that effect that he was not going to buy a dose of vaccine more than $10. Mr. Speaker, at the committee, we gave back to him his own documents, whether or not he was familiar with those documents. Mr. Speaker, he admitted that those documents came from him. Mr. Speaker, I think that he could have taken the advantage to brief the House, and he didn't do so. Mr. Speaker, another very interesting scenario was that the motion was debated on the 8th of July. The committee was constituted on the 9th of July. The minister was appearing on the 15th of July. Then he brought a letter dated 14th of July that Amatun has withdrawn from the contract. Quite ridiculous. Mr. Speaker, now all the developments were pointing to the fact that the actions and inactions of the minister were all an afterthought. Because number one, Mr. Speaker, he signed the agreement or the contract before the AG's advice. He signed the agreement before even writing to the PPA. Mr. Speaker, again, I think that he also mentioned the fact that he relied on the executive instrument 64 and 65. Mr. Speaker, I have gone through the executive instrument 64 and 65. There is no provision in that particular document that says that when a minister is dealing with, international transaction, he should sidestep Parliament or should breach the Public Procurement Act. No way. So, Mr. Speaker, on all the terms of reference, I think that the minister was in complete violation of all the issues we were looking into. At this point, I thank you very much for the opportunity.